Hear
Oh,
me.
hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so pleased to have a special guest with me here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle Gibson Grant, and I am the owner of Haven Coaching and Consulting. I work with professionals and individuals to help them really elevate their corporate life, their work life, and get clear on what their career purpose is. But today, I have a special guest. Rex Sanders, and he is the partner and co-founder of The Hive. So without further ado, Rex, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you so much for having me represent the Hive. The Hive is a people-first HR consultancy. We do recruiting and a lot of culture work with public sector clients primarily. Really interested in putting people first in the equation of workplace culture. And so that's what the Hive is all about. I founded the Hive about a year ago after a long career in public service, overseeing HR programs. Um,
I
so,
love it.
yeah, super excited to talk with you today.
Oh, I love it. That's so awesome. So I really wanted to have this conversation today because, as many of you in this audience may or may not be aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. This is a topic that is so passionate and heartfelt for me. And I share that because I've seen, with me having a 25 plus year career in human resources, I've seen the effects of mental health in the workplace, how employees and leaders in particular, suffer. They suffer in silence. For I think a long time, we just really didn't talk about mental health. So I love that it's now at the forefront. And so for today's conversation, we're talking about mental health, but we're also talking about the effects of bullying in the workplace and how does that affect mental health. So I'm super excited to engage in this conversation with you today, Rex.
Well, thank you, Danielle. It's an important conversation too, especially around workplace bullying and how it affects mental health. Over half of all U.S. workers are affected by bullying in the workplace, and that's quite a large
Mhm.
number. And so, a lot of health effects that accompany workplace bullying are very serious to the folks who endure them. And that's something that we at the Hive are really trying to work towards: is create bully-free workplaces.
Do you even think a bully-free workplace is possible in
I
full
do.
transparency? All right,
I
tell me more about that.
I really do. I mean, the, bullying affects half of the population.
Mhm.
However, our workplaces do not need to be a place where bullying is accepted or tolerated. I mean, if bullying is similar to other types of abuse in the workplace, and for things like sexual harassment and harassment itself, these kind of things do go on. But if you have a workplace that targets that kind of behavior and educates their employees about it, and really holds a line that that kind of abuse isn't tolerated, you can rid your organization of workplace bullying, which is an exciting thing.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that warms my heart to think about the possibilities of that. That would be phenomenal. So I'm glad you talked a little bit about the statistics around workplace bullying and in the workplace. What would you say are some of the hidden costs of workplace bullying and its effect on its employees and their mental health and productivity?
Yeah, huge effects of bullying on individuals. We call them targets. And targets of bullying, first of all, as you can imagine, if you're being abused at the workplace, which bullying is a form of abuse, you really, the nature of bullying many times is covert, and something that is kind of hard to put your finger on. And so, therefore, it creates a sense of confusion in the targets so that they don't quite understand what's going on, or each little cut that they receive isn't big enough to make a big deal out of. But when you pull all of those kind of behaviors together, it really creates a psychological effect on the individual, which leads to increased stress, increased anxiety, which leads to physical effects of stress on your body, which also leads to uh, folks having to take sick leave. workers not being present when they're at work, worrying about what's going on. So you're losing, as an employer, a lot of productivity from your employees. They're also getting sick and not able to work. It also increases turnover at the organization. And so you're paying high turnover costs. There's a huge amount of costs to the organization and to the individual, especially around their own mental health. Some studies have shown, Danielle, that bullied workers are 2 times more likely to experience suicidal ideation than those who haven't, which is really a sad statistic. It goes to show the impact that this kind of behavior can have on folks. It's quite scary.
Isn't it? That's astounding. And I loved what you said about individuals experiencing workplace bullying, but it's so subtle. It's just like little cuts, right? And at some point, you get to a point where it's like, oh my God, I've been cut and I'm suffering and I need to, provide medical attention to this issue. And so I think what you're sharing is so important for individuals, for leaders, those who are in management, and for frontline associates to be aware of when they are experiencing this in the workplace, to say something, to do something. So thank you so much for sharing those pieces of information. I'm curious, in your opinion, how can organizations recognize and combat mental health repercussions of corporate bullying?
Well, there is a pretty clear path to do this. And the first thing that employers need to do is to educate their employees and their managers on what is workplace bullying, what is the nature of it, how can we identify it and spot it in our own organizations, and how to stand up to bullying when they see it in the organization. Now, that alone doesn't solve the problem. You then need to really create a supportive, psychologically safe community at your workplace, which is so important. And this comes from the very top all the way down. It's leaders really putting forth an intentional effort on creating a culture that is positive, that is safe, that folks feel safe coming to work, and that they feel safe speaking up when there is this kind of behavior or other types of wrongdoing in the workplace, that folks feel like their complaints will be heard. That's a big problem with bullying, is a lot of people aren't believed or heard when they come forward with these kinds of issues. And then I think the third thing is really holding bullies accountable, putting in a policy in the organization, educating folks about bullying, as I mentioned. And then when things go wrong and there is a bullying situation, which there will be, it's pretty rampant and common, that those folks are held accountable for their actions in some way, and that they understand that that kind of ongoing behavior will not be tolerated in this workplace. So that's a really clear path of how people can start to recognize it and deal with it. Those little things have a tremendous effect on mental health in the workplace of employees, because that in itself creates an environment where folks feel safe and protected, which is where we can do our best work.
So true. And as you said, it starts from the top. It starts from the executive leadership team and truly understanding and recognizing that bullying does occur in an adult workplace. Sometimes people think, oh, bullying, that's for kids, but adults bully too. And so, to your point, it's critical that organizations have policies in place to address this. So let me ask you this. If you were talking to an individual who's like, hey, Rex, I'm actually in a leadership position and I feel like I'm being bullied, what would you recommend that they do?
Well, the first thing is to really understand the concept of bullying, and to know that if you're feeling that way, there is some truth to it, and you should really trust your own feelings. The problem when it comes to bullying is that we tend to not believe ourselves. Folks who have a benevolent view of the world and come to work expecting that their work will speak for itself and that what they do will be recognized by others and their hard work will pay off. Those kind of individuals typically are the targets of bullying.
Mm,
And if you can begin to recognize that not everyone is benevolent in the workplace, that there are issues like this, you can then begin to confront it in a way that is helpful to you instead of harmful to you. It's all about understanding and communication about that. Now, as a leader, it happens more often than you think. A lot of folks think that bullying happens to the weakest of people, the ones who aren't in the positions of so-called power or at the top of the hierarchy at the organization. But it's very common that there is bullying at the C-suite, that there is bullying at the management level and the executive levels. And sometimes that bullying is not from top down. Sometimes it's your colleagues, and sometimes even it's from subordinates up.
mm,
So you really need to get a good handle on what it is that's happening to you. And I think my second advice is to partner with someone like you, a coach who can really sit down and help you unpack the things that are happening to you and how you are responding to them. Having a support person, a third party, a coach, good friends, good family that understands you is critical in these kind of situations because it helps you feel sane and it
right,
helps you feel like you're not alone.
right. Well said. Thank you for that. I think that is absolutely sound advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. One last question, because I don't want to keep the audience here too long, but I do want to provide some good information and support here. In what ways do you feel does a toxic work environment contribute to employee burnout?
Mm.
And then how can we work to foster a culture of support? What would you say to that?
Yeah. Toxic work environments are a perfect breeding ground for bullying. They are the type of environments that are these very high paced, chaotic types of management situations where employees feel like they can never be good enough or never do enough um, correctly. And that kind of stress and ongoing kind of burnout is something that people, no matter who you are, where you're at in the organization, can feel. And that is not something that is indicative of a high performing environment. And so I think, having supportive, management practices, really putting a focus on psychological safety in the workplace and being very intentional about it allows people to have a reprieve from this kind of burnout. I mean, burnout tends to come from working too hard and being stressed out.
Hmm.
And if you can eliminate those kind of things in the workplace where people aren't so stressed out, we're all going to have a lot of work to do. But if you'll notice, the work stress that comes along with having a lot to do is a lot different than the interpersonal stress that you have with someone who is treating you badly at work. I mean, completely different. That kind of stress will make you sick. The other kind of stress is more productive stress that isn't going to send you to the hospital. But it's that burnout that's happening is because people are not being treated well in the workplace, and that is leading to these kinds of issues. So if you can tackle workplace bullying in your workplace, you're going to get rid of a huge amount of this type of interpersonal stress and put an expectation that this is going to be a positive workplace that we can all work in for a long period of time and get along and enjoy ourselves. I've always believed, Danielle, that work should be enjoyable. We spend so much time at the workplace. We really should be able to come in, do our work, have fun, and be productive. And that all helps the bottom line, no matter if you're a public or private or nonprofit employer, whatever services you're providing to the world are going to improve if you can improve your culture in the workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Rex, I've enjoyed this bite-sized moment of time to share and engage in this discussion with you because, as I said, for me, mental health awareness and understanding how to support oneself in ensuring that they are of sound mind and can think rationally and do all the things so critically important. And by you sharing with us today some tips and things to think about and consider as it pertains to bullying in the workplace, I think was spot on. So I so appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing. Any last words you would like to share with the audience before we wrap this up?
Well, thank you, Danielle. I just want to say thank you to you and thank you to your listeners for taking the time to engage with us today. And I'd love to hear more about what your listeners think about workplace bullying and their own expectation. I mean, their own experiences and thoughts about workplace bullying. It's very interesting to me to understand how folks experience this in their own workplaces. And I just want to thank you for putting this as the center of your focus on mental health month. It's very important to have these kind of discussions and to talk through these kind of issues publicly. And so want to thank you for that. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have enjoyed this conversation, please leave some comments below. Let us know what's going on in your workplace, in your organization. Do you feel like you need to be supported on this so important topic? Leave comments, send me a direct message. We are here to be of service. So thank you, Rex. And to my audience, thank you for watching and listening. And until the next time, fabulous day.
Thank you, Danielle.